And now I would like to turn over again to President Klaus. Your Excellency, the impression of the scholars and of the politicians as well is like we are entering this post-Westphalian world order where all the principles of Westphalia are being eroded, sovereignty first and foremost. And if I remember correctly, you once said that you cannot have democratic accountability in anything bigger than the nation state. And you have long warned us about the loss of national sovereignty within the European Union. So do you believe that the current crisis, security, energy, migration, have validated your concerns? And what path forward do you see for Europe and European Union for a strong alliance of sovereign states?
Well, thank you for giving me the floor. I didn't expect it. Nevertheless, I am pleased to answer. You know, I'm originally an academic economist, you know, who strictly, all his life, methodologically differentiates normative statement from descriptive statements. You know, when I listen to this discussion, there is a mixture of suggestions which belongs to we would like to have something, without realizing whether it is part of the reality or not. This is what bothers me technically and even philosophically. For example, diplomacy, I don't know who made that statement, our Finnish colleague. Diplomacy should go first. What does it mean? Is it a meaningful statement? Is it a sort of description of our reality these days? I'm afraid not. If you look at the two most tragic developments not very far from us, Ukraine war on the one hand, Gaza on the other, did diplomacy go first? It was a tragic mistake of the West, of all the international organizations, global organizations, of all of our governments, of all of us, not to negotiate before February 24th. You know, tragic mistake of the world. You know, Gaza. Isn't it the same case of the non-existence of diplomacy, just one-sided decisions of one very strong player in the game? I really can't stand getting news on my mobile saying that in the last 3 days in Gaza more than 300 people were killed. Please don't underestimate that more than 300 people in the last 3 days is more than the number of people killed in the Ukraine in the last 3 months. And things like that. So diplomacy, I am sorry to say, doesn't exist. We just talk about diplomacy and we are not doing really diplomacy. And that's the main problem. Second, if I may say, my colleague here, my neighbor, attacked President Trump for going out of the WHO from the World Health Organization. Do I understand? This is the most tragic, non-existent organizations in the history. It's something like Comecon in the communist past, really. This is just the way how to put activist representatives of the farm industry plus some activists in the medical profession to go together and to dictate the rest of the world what we should do. Please don't make such a sentence statements. You know, the NGOs should be the first one to be liquidated on the list. And I'm fascinated by the fact that President Trump did something like that. And he should continue to do the same or very similar things. I think that President Trump is attacking some vested interests all over the world, something which should have been done in all our countries every day. And I know that it's difficult. It can be done probably only in America. In our countries with our highly developed democracy, which means sometimes irresponsibility. You know, when I in my second term as prime minister, we were so angry with the bureaucracy ruling our country. I must confess here that at the beginning of my second term, I introduced the anti-bureaucratic commission. Something what Vance has been doing. I'm sure he followed what we suggested, and I'm sure the U.S. Secret Service got the secret information about my commission and studied it. You know that there is nothing new under the sun. You know, but we failed. We didn't have sufficient in a fragile early post-communist country. We didn't have sufficient strength and rapidly developed vested interests in the early post-communist era in a fragile world of democracy simply blocked anything like that. No one political leader in the world has the same power as President Trump. You know, Russian president or Chinese president would never be allowed to do the same game with the tariffs as Trump is doing. You know, I'm absolutely sure in Russia and in China, all the relevant political forces just below would eliminate both Putin and Xi for doing anything like that. It can be done only in America. So I'm absolutely sure that the shift, that the attack Trump is making against the rest of the world is a great event, is a chance, is a window of opportunity for all of us, and we either use this open window of opportunity or not, and we can go forever in our sterile way of thinking. Multiculturalism. Mr. Minister, I don't know that if I quote, multiculturalism is necessary. This is for me an empty phrase, you know. What is necessary is the best possible, the most friendly, the most cooperative relationships among countries, yes. But I tried at least to structure the issue of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism in the world, yes. Multiculturalism inside individual countries, a big problem, as all of us know, all of you in West Balkans know more than we. Simply, what do we mean by multiculturalism? Is the leftist, collectivist, absolutely wrong ideology, multiculturalism. We should make a list who will sign that statement or not here. So, again, let's be in favor of the best friendly relations among countries and cultures all over the world, but to implant different cultures in a small territory is the way how to destroy it, how to kill the country. We know that we inherited some minorities, but it's not necessary, and we know what kind of problems it brings. But it's not necessary to artificially, in a fashionable way, to bring new minorities into our already divided countries, and so on. So I think let's stop talking just friendly about that cultural diplomacy is better than war. That's so evident that it doesn't bring any information, anything. But I don't want to interrupt the friendly atmosphere here by introducing some conflicts. But sometimes it's necessary.
Thank you, President Klaus, for your thoughts and provocations. I think they can serve as a good point for discussion and as a provocation, so I believe that Foreign Minister Kovač wants to reply something, since this is a panel and open discussion. Please, the floor is yours.
I just want to join President Klaus in saying, when we speak about Trump or what he does, people say he's stupid, he's crazy, there's no method. There's a famous Austrian-American philosopher, Paul Feyerabend, who wrote a book in 1975. And the title was Against Method.
And anything goes.
Yes, anything goes. That's the idea. So if you want to change things, okay, you must be radical in removing certain prejudices. And this is basically what he's doing, what Trump is trying to do. We will see what the outcome will be. But when he speaks about common sense policies, we have today in the UK a leftist or a left Democrat, Keir Starmer, speaking openly about a new migration policy. This is something which was unimaginable 10 years ago in a leftist Democratic party. Tony Blair, his party comrade, published the other day on his website of his company a text about the problems of climate change policies, which was reproduced by the the London Daily. So, once again a taboo. And the other day I watched on FT Weekend podcast the now ambassador of the UK in the US, Mendelsohn, who was a member of cabinet, twice a minister in the UK government, and the European Commissioner, who said, Lord Mendelsohn, we have exaggerated with wokeism and genderism. Can you imagine? So the Labour Party changes its policies due to, I would say, basically the new ambiance, atmosphere created by Donald Trump. So we already have a change. Things are changing. I can only say we need really common sense policies. And we will also see other countries which will adopt new policies, because things are changing, and we should not be afraid of this no method approach, because, and I agree with Feyerabend, if you want to change things, you must be radical in your approach. Otherwise, the structures will not change. But I repeat, we do not know what the outcome will be in the end of his no method or special method approach. Thank you.
Yes, President.
Trump created new geography. Why? Because during the 20th century, all the diplomats visit Geneva, Oslo, Vienna. But now diplomats visit Riyadh, Istanbul, Astana. Europe loses the chance to be actor. This is conclusion.
The Ukraine war, look, I mean, we had negotiations in Istanbul. It's a European conflict between between Russia and Ukraine, an invasion of Russia. Europe is not at the table.
Of course. And why Europe should be at the table?
No, I'm just saying. I'm just. True.
Who in Europe is responsible of that? Whom would you send there as your representative? Someone from Croatia who would feel that this is my representative in such discussions? I can't imagine any number.
You're right.
I can nominate me to be the European representative to solve
Let's go
the
for it.
problem, but otherwise I don't see any chance.
Why not?
Thank you, sir. You wanted to add something, Your Excellency?
Well, if I may return to some of the questions which have been addressed here. First of all, on sovereignty, I think that when we are talking about the Westphalia concept of sovereignty, it was never a democratic sovereignty of nations, of peoples. It was the sovereignty of the rulers. And that was the big change came in the 19th century when it was transferred into the sovereignty of the people. And now this is also under attack by authoritarian and even totalitarian forces and opinions. So I think we should recognize that. But my main point was that we are living in a world which has never existed before. We have never had 8 billion people on Earth. We have never had climate change of a few degrees already evident, and we have never had this sort of man-made, human-made species extinction, advancing destruction of rainforests, etc. We have never seen this in the world before. So what we must learn from history is that we cannot apply those ideas and ideologies which were possible, say, 20, even 30 years ago, not to speak of centuries ago, as being possible in today's world. And that is my main point, is that we, like it or not, we have to come to terms with multiculturalism, with everybody being on board, and not striving for hegemony. I mean, we have big powers and there are smaller powers, that's true. But everybody should have the same rights. Yes. And we do not accept that the rights of, we should never, this European Union is based on not accepting the rights of great powers to dictate to others. Everybody has to have the same possibility and opportunity. And as for multiculturalism, I come from a city in Helsinki where already 25% of the people are born outside Finland. And we just had local elections. And my group, the Social Democratic Group, I was a candidate also, received 21 seats. And we have 5 people, representatives, who have come from have been born outside Finland. And this is multiculturalism at its best, and it has to be. And we have to be supportive and open to that. Of course we have problems, we all recognize them, but they are so many respects social problems more than cultural problems. They are both problems, but they are both social problems. The social issues, and we have to be able to deal with them. So these are some of the points. And as regarding if you want to change things, yes. But there are 2 people in the 19th century history who did most things to change things with their against method was Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. And I would take them as examples of to emulate in any respect. Thank you.
Nor would I.
President Meidani, you wanted to add something?
Well, I like to mention something which is more scientific, because my colleagues have mentioned many times change, and it is the meaning. It's motion, it's movement. Any kind of movement is change, but it doesn't mean that change is to destroy. But it's to change or to move. This could be done in a continuous way or with jumps. And in science, we use all elements, but always to go forward, not to destroy. And the meaning of change during this kind of discussion here was to destroy, not to use more these institutions, which are actually in working, but to create new structures. I agree. To have new structures, going through all structures and to ameliorate their functioning. Otherwise, we can create a kind of a situation which will be much more problematic than it is today. So this was the answer.
Whereas the paradox of change, as Lampedusa said, if you want the things to change, if you want the things to remain the same, something has to change, right? Or as the Chinese Book of Changes said, the only thing that never changes is the change itself, right? So, absolutely, in a constructive way. Your Excellency, I wanted to turn to you. Recently, in one interview, you said that the European Union needs a kick in the backside in order to finally start seriously recognizing itself in terms of security, in terms of defense. So do you have the impression that Europe is running out of time in this new, how to say, great power rivalry that are again on the table, and how to witness revival of the reputation of Europe and to put it back on the table? Because as we can see, according to many politician scholars, it's losing its relevance nowadays.
So when you look at Europe, at the European Union, it failed in the 90s and in 10 years ago with the crisis in Ukraine. So when Milosevic decided to wage war against Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, who was in charge of the conflict? Who was the crisis manager? European Union. European Community, then the European Union. In the end, the conflict was solved because the Americans intervened diplomatically. Ukraine, we had the Minsk Accords, Minsk I, Minsk II. In the end, no solution, and the Americans took over. The Americans are today, with Trump, the principal mediators and crisis managers. So we have a conflict on the European soil in Ukraine, and as I said before, Europe is not in charge. It is, as the Germans would say, it's an Armutszeugnis. It's a shame, in fact. So we do not even have the ambition, I mean, speaking of the Europeans, of being in charge of a conflict on the European soil. So before the Russians attacked Ukraine for the second time in 2022, there was the idea of having negotiations. And Mr. Biden was against negotiations. The Europeans should have imposed negotiations. They should have negotiated because it's in our European interest to have negotiations, to speak to each other. And we were a victim of this war imposed by Milosevic. We negotiated with him. And the war was going on. Then the war broke out, Putin attacked. It was forbidden to have negotiations. And then Mr. Trump comes and says, we want to negotiate. Instead of joining him immediately and saying, the man is right, we have to speak to each other. The Europeans, whose interest it would be normally to have negotiations, criticized him because of imposing negotiations. Something is wrong. Now, fortunately, we have people like Mr. Merz in Germany who said we need to work with the Americans. It's realistic. With Mr. Trump, without Mr. Trump, Mrs. Harris, Mr. Biden, whom? The American president, okay, the most powerful person in the world, the most powerful politician. So we have to join forces And we have to find a solution to end the war in Ukraine. I know it's difficult for the Ukrainians, but we have a minister from Finland here, a foreign minister from Finland, and the Finns were also a victim of an invasion in 1939 and 1940. But today, look at Finland, member of NATO, member of the European Union. So we need a long-term approach. You have to be smart. And what is the idea? Do we want to continue with the war? Is that the idea? Continue with the war? Who will fight in Ukraine? The Brits said no. After months and months of announcing sending forces, no. Mr. Macron says we will be stationed in Lvov. We will not go to the front. The Germans, no, we're not really in favor. The Italians say, Mr. Macron says, niente, no. No Italian troop. The Poles say no. Okay, who will fight in Ukraine? The Ukrainians. Can they stop the Russians on their own? No. So what's the solution? Negotiations. Thank you.
A lot of questions for our participants, but I believe it will be very valuable for some of our guests in the hall to ask a question. I believe there is an interest for this debate, so if anyone has any question or a comment, feel free. No? Yes? Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ivan. I am Abdulaziz Atouji, the former Director General of ISISCO. I worked in this organization from 1991. It's working. I can't do it like this. From 1991 to 2019. Well, multiculturalism, as we practice it and practiced it in the past, doesn't mean the hegemony of one culture over the other. It means the rapprochement of cultures, coexistence of cultures, cooperation among cultures, dialogue among cultures. If you want to make a culture superior to other cultures, then you will initiate wars and animosity and disturbances in the society. I know that the Europeans, or some of the Europeans, are worried because of the influx of immigration, especially from Sub-Saharan countries in Africa, and from the war zones where people are driven away from their homes, their towns and villages and cities. But the solution is not to be afraid from this existence, temporal existence in many parts of it, but to find solutions to it. Solve the problems in the origin of the problems. The countries which suffer from wars, from division, from also manipulation by some European countries or Western countries of their wealth and deposing on them dictators, like in some African countries. The French colonization left Africa just metaphorically, but realistically it's still working there, bringing generals and put them on top of the governments there through the coup d'etat. And they should serve them because they are benefiting from the uranium, from the gold, from all the minerals that are there. And also these countries are open markets for the products of France or any other country which has interests there. This is a reality that we have to face. On the other hand, there are countries that have different religions, different ethnic backgrounds, different cultures. For centuries, you cannot drive them away. You have to coexist between, make a coexistence between all these components of the one society. Let's take Bosnia and Herzegovina as an example. There are Muslims, there are Serbs, there are Orthodox, there are Catholics, and there are different races. And the war that happened there should be a lesson for all other countries. It shouldn't happen again. There should be a democratic system that rules the country and protects the religions and the ethnic backgrounds and the cultures, not to put a culture over the others. This is a reality that we have to face in a modern society where democracy should prevail. What is the meaning of democracy if it doesn't protect all the components of the society and make all people equal in front of the law? The problem is that the fanaticism, like what is happening in some minds of some of the Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina, like Dodik and his group, they want to have the Serbs ruling Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is not right, and it shouldn't happen, and it will never happen. The world will not tolerate it. So let's give the chance for multiculturalism where it should be successful. Some countries do not need it in some way, because the majority of its people are from one religion or maybe one culture, and maybe one background, ethnic background. But this is a rare situation. If we apply this rule that monoculture in certain countries, but multiculturalism among countries, then the world will be in chaos. Because look, for example, in Africa, in South Africa, what happened? Because one race dominated, which is not an African race, for centuries, and ruled the country with apartheid. Now South Africa is a democratic country. Those who came as invaders are still living there and enjoying the democracy of South Africa, and they are in the government, and they have their parties. So the nationalistic feelings, when dominate, ruin the life of humanity. I respect the former president of Czech Republic, Mr. Klaus, but I think he is afraid of the migration that is coming to the Czech Republic and to Germany and some other Western countries. Yeah, find a solution for it. Let them go back to their homes, but make their homes livable, and do not support the dictators there. Thank you very much.
Short comment on just the last sentence. I think, of course, that the mass migration is a total tragedy, nonsense, something what should have never been allowed to exist, and it's based on the stupid and destructive ideology of multiculturalism, Mr. Minister. Tragic. But just my position of what the Czech Republic is afraid or not. You probably don't know that the Czech Republic, which is much closer to the Ukraine than Macedonia or some other countries, we are number one in the world of refugees and migrants from Ukraine per capita. The Czech Republic is the highest in the world, so for us it's a real fundamental issue. And the nonsense of mass migration, it probably will kill the world. But there are now too many topics, and I don't know which one to pick up. We didn't come here probably, no, definitely, to suggest ways how to go out of the Ukraine war. There is a simple solution to nominate me to solve it, and I will do it not in 24 days as Trump promised. I would do it in 12 hours. That's I think we haven't mentioned something what is more fundamental in the current world. We are losing first. My generation used to live in a bilateral world of US and Soviet Union. Then, after the fall of communism, the world has changed because of the weakness of the irrelevance of Soviet Union, and Russia then moved to the monolateral, unilateral world of America. But this world has been coming to an end. So what we are experiencing are the first fight, struggles, problems connected with the general shift to the world of multilateralism. Of course, the old hegemon is crazy, doesn't want to lose its original power and its original position, and some of the other potential hegemons are still hesitating whether to openly enter into this conflict. But this is the definition of the current world, and to my great regret, even the Ukraine war is a part of this shift to the multilateral world. I will speak to an American university in 2 weeks now, and I haven't yet written the speech, but the title of the speech I promised the organizers, I call it the Ukraine war as a prelude, if you can use such a cultural term, prelude to a multilateral world, So this is something to debate on such a forum. Are we right? Are we wrong? Or not? That should be more interesting. But I'm speaking too much. Sorry.
I just want to check. Does President Klaus also think that the catastrophe of mass migration also applies to the European colonization of America, North and South America?
My first comment is discussion, and I always interrupt the speaker. Do you speak about individual migration or mass migration? This is methodologically a fundamental difference, because most of the people who defend migration as if it is an individual migration. I have no problem with a Chinese lady who organizes a restaurant 5 minutes from my home in Prague. When she tries to be there, her children go to the Czech schools and speak absolute Czech and so on. Let's not justify mass migration with arguments based on individual migration. This is a law which would be put into stone, and please interrupt any discussion and think about those terms. So let's accept that it's normal not to migrate.
So was the European colonization of America mass migration or not?
Yes. Colonization of America?
Yes. Was it mass migration or not?
America is based on migration. It's the tragedy for all of us, and she repeats her mistakes, and she justifies her thinking now after 2 centuries by supporting migration. Tragic mistake.
I believe we will have a very interesting coffee break, but we have time for 2 more questions. Tasmina first and Mr. Jones.
But one comment. Jesus Christ was migrant.
Yes.
Muhammad was migrant. Jehovah, all visionary like migrant. Europe is migrant. Princess for finish it.
Thank you. As ever, President Ivanov in a few seconds encapsulates the whole argument. 2 points, if I may, on the issue of migration and on what's happening in UK politics. We are here today to discuss the importance of diplomacy. The reason of much migration in the world is because of a failure of leadership. It's because of invoking wars, it's because of military adventurism, it's because of going into other people's countries and causing chaos. So where do the populations of those countries go? Where do displaced people go? Where do people looking for food go? They seek refuge elsewhere. So if we're going to be involved in invading countries, we should make sure that there are policies to look after the people who will escape the result of that invasion. We're living in a world where I fear that it suits domestic agendas of, in most cases, field leaders to blame migrants for the ills of what's going on in their own country. And it's an appalling state of affairs. It's speaking to a group of people in certain countries who are looking for any excuse to blame someone else because they're angry. They're angry because their economies are failing, and their economies are failing because of failures in leadership. And the easiest people to blame are those who are coming in. Now, of course, every country has to have a system of immigration and managed migration. Of course it does. But that doesn't mean to say that migration is a bad thing. In the United Kingdom, the National Health Service is based on people who've come from all over the world to contribute to it. Without it, there would be no health service in the United Kingdom. So we're very proud of it. And in Scotland, our national drink is, of course, Scotch whisky. But it would arguably, our national food is the curry from people from Bangladesh, India and Pakistan who have come there. I was the first Muslim woman, first woman of colour in Scottish history ever elected to the UK Parliament because my father migrated to the United Kingdom in the 60s. We have much to contribute, but we must not allow ourselves to think that all migration is wrong or that we should be separating people, because in that way madness lies. We have to learn from each other's cultures, and young people. And some of the work this forum does and Institute for Cultural Diplomacy does by educating young people and introducing them to each other is so important, because they have to learn from each other, because they have to learn about tolerance. But I have to say that it seems to me in many cases blaming migration and migrants is just because of a lack of an ability to manage internal economies by domestic governments. On the subject of the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, I'm from Scotland, so it'll come as no surprise to any of you that I'm most unimpressed by Sir Keir Starmer as our Prime Minister, not least because he negotiated away the Scottish fishing rights to the European Union just a couple of days ago. But it may appear from an international perspective that Sir Keir Starmer is popular, but he's the most unpopular leader now in the United Kingdom because...
I know that.
Because he was elected on a manifesto and has gone on to deliver something else, because he is trying to outright the right. You can't do that. But part of the reason why that has happened is because the left, and there is a place for left politics, have lost their place because they have tried to impose ideologies, biological irregularities, asking us not to believe the evidence of our eyes and ears, and have found themselves in the place they are, where we see President Trump now surrounded by women in sport because the left have been unable to defend women and what the women stands for. So the importance of this forum is demonstrated by exactly what we're talking about today. I'm very delighted to be a part of it. But as a person of mixed race, I have to say we cannot blame people for seeking a better life for themselves and their families. And I will say this: no mother will put their child on a boat to cross the channel if she thinks that is less safe than where she's currently living. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Henry Jones from the United States. I have a couple of things. A question, first of all, my ancestry is primarily European, but I also have Choctaw on both sides. So I have Native American, and they were, in fact, invaders and conquerors. Many of the Native Americans were. Swapping territory, taking slaves, went on for quite a long time before the Europeans showed up. The Europeans showing up in the United States and also in South Africa were seeking a better life. So do they not have a right to be in those territories? That's just a basic question. Just because where do we draw the line, in other words? That's just background. My primary question is this: we speak of democracy. We're all from a representative democracy or a republic. What rights do the majority populations in our respective nations have to reject mass migration? Especially if there's popular will, there's majority will that does not want this or wants it tempered or modified. Are their rights being respected? And if they're not, are we really living in a democratic society? That's my question.
So I agree with you that mass immigration, mass migration is principally the cause of failed leadership. A very clear example of that is Germany. In 2015, I was in the opposition, we were fighting to get to power. I gave an interview to the Bild Zeitung, which is the sun of Germany, the biggest daily, a tabloid. And I said, if Germany is destabilized, Europe is destabilized. Now Germany has AfD, 22% in the elections. In the polls right now, 25%. And the SPD, the party in power, and CDU, CSU feel strong pressure from the AfD because of people who are unhappy with mass migration. So it is normal that there is migration. It is perfectly normal. Human history is about migration. But it's about how to control migration and how to prevent democracies, societies from becoming destabilized if there is too much migration. So if you look at France, what is going on in France, look at what is going on in Germany, what is going on in Austria, all the electoral results in those countries stem from problems with demography and migration. So we have to take into account the reality. And if you, as a politician from an established party, if you do not take seriously what people want, what people feel, you get such parties like AfD in Germany, who in a very unresponsible manner, very frequently, express the feelings of the people. You have to respect the feelings of the people. You cannot overrule them. People may be wrong from your standpoint. They may be wrong. Perhaps they're not wrong. Maybe you're wrong. But you have to understand their feelings. You have to understand their fears. You have to talk to them. You cannot say just easily, wir schaffen das, as Ms. Merkel said, for whom I had some respect, of course, but wir schaffen das. Apparently, man hat es nicht geschafft. And now today, the Germans have a problem. I mean, the established parties have a problem. So mass migration can be, and is very frequently, a problem for the stability of a society, and responsible leadership has to do everything it can to prevent its society from becoming destabilized.
Just an observation. Yeah, I agree with the necessity of taking into account these realities, our people's feelings and so on. But it's striking that both in Germany and in Finland and in almost every other country, opposition to migration is the largest in elections in those places where there are the smallest number of migrants. So if you have a community in Finland with zero migration, you have half of the population voting for the anti-migration party. But if you have a town like Helsinki, where we have 25% migrants, the anti-migration party just lose.
Thank you very much. And I would like to give the floor to Mark Dunford, the Director of Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Ivan. I'd prefer if you close the session, but I wanted to, just as one of the two representatives of civil society, offer maybe a brief reflection of optimism on a somewhat challenging, maybe pessimistic tendency for the panel. I was reflecting just now at the chance at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy to work with many great political scientists. Professor Joseph Nye, we referred to a few times already today, but also the great Benjamin Barber. Many of you may not know this, but he's the one who actually termed this concept of global interdependence. And I had the chance to work with him and learn from him before he even published the books later on this topic. And Benjamin Barber defines interdependence the following way. Interdependence is the condition in which nations, cities, and individuals are deeply connected, economically, environmentally, and socially, so that no actor can solve major global problems alone, and all are affected by each other's actions. Fine, that's easy. He goes on to say, currently, we have a world where everything is connected, but no one is in charge. And that's a little bit how I feel today. It's easy for us to point the finger at this government or this group of governments, etc., and be very pessimistic. But where I'm optimistic is, again, the two individuals I referred to earlier today, President Kennedy. Peace is a daily, a weekly, monthly process. Let's think of each of us today representing different groups, different institutions, different citizens. I think we all, as President Klaus said, we have opportunities every single day. Look at Mother Teresa. She wasn't representing a government. She wasn't representing an NGO. You could argue maybe she was on behalf of the church. But really, as one individual, one woman, every day, patiently, consequently, day after day, week after week. And that's, for me, a very positive reminder that actually we do have opportunities every day. We may not always realize it. And I think that's the challenge for us as we leave today's forum and continue the next few days and eventually go back home. What can we do? What can I do? Not to change the world or reinvent the United Nations or fix the issue of the Security Council, but maybe in our own ways we can also have those opportunities. We had a few of those opportunities already the last few days. The meeting we had earlier this morning with the foreign minister, a few opportunities came out his way. So I'm definitely encouraged that there are opportunities there. So we may not be able to solve the problems of the world today and bring peace to Ukraine and Russia overnight, but I do really believe that before, during, and after conflicts, we do have opportunities. And let's make sure that we don't miss those opportunities in our capacities. So there's a few words of optimism, but now I leave you for the closing words, Ivan, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark. So thank you so much for being here. You know, frequently we are listening to this word transition, and as Bauman said, in order to have a transition, we need to have point A, point B. Sometimes we know what are we running away from, but we don't know where are we going. So I hope that soon we will figure that out and we have the right direction, although we have different ideas, different concepts. One thing is for sure, that we need to be united and we need to have a peace, and we need to find models, not of coexistence, as Mr. Moratino said, but to find a way how to live together. Not one to another, but one with another. So there's one saying that we are frequently using, that in Macedonia, first time you come by accident or by invitation. The second time is because of the first time, and the third time is a habit. So this forum is a habit already, so I believe that together with Mark, we'll continue our efforts. And as you said, maybe we won't solve the things now, but the most important thing is that we're going to ask the right question, maybe not giving the answers immediately, but I believe that it was a provocation for our thoughts, for our arguments, and let's continue during the coffee break, which you're all cordially invited to. Thank you so much for being here.